as the MTG, we got decks, and boy do we freaking have decks. Today, something I haven't done in a really long time. This is a triple tech. There's so much to do with mono white in this format right now. And not just regular stuff. It's outside of the realm of just traditional aggro or mid-range, you know. There's really tricksy stuff to do with mono white. So let's give some of these decks a look. A lot of them are, all three of these are good. Alright, well the first deck I want to talk about is definitely the most competitive by my estimation. From what I can tell, this is an amazing deck. Lots and lots of powerful cards. Now, Atarka Red is the mono red deck that plays Atarka's Command, and some other cards, you know, become immense. But this is the mono white deck that will play Dromoka's Command. Let's call it Dromoka tokens, Dromokans perhaps, or Selesnya tokens, Dromoka White, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of names. But I actually think this deck is crazy. We play 22 cards in this deck that produce tokens. That's a lot. That's so much. We go extremely wide in this deck, and there's some buffs and stuff, so things get pretty out of hand pretty fast. The deck is awesome. Let me just run through the token producers real quick, which is easier said than done. You know, there's 22 of them. But first of all, let's talk about Hangarback Walker for just a second. Hangarback Walker, the only non-white card in the deck, you know, but he's colorless. We got to play him. He produces tokens, and they fly, and they're really good with the buffs from, you know, Gideon and other cards that we'd be playing. It's really good. Hangarback Walker. I don't see any reason not to play the card. I just wanted to get that out of the way. It's a really good 2-drop and a really good 4-drop for that matter. 4 copies of Monastery Mentor in the deck, and yeah, a full playset, I would say. I mean, the guy dies an awful lot. He's going to die to Wild Slash. He's going to die to Fiery Impulse. He's going to die to Silkwrap. He's going to die to everything in the format. So you want as many copies of him as possible because he's really good. We've got something like 20 spells in all in the deck that can activate this guy. And Monastery Mentor is just really good if he's allowed to survive more than a turn or two. He's going to pump out a lot of dudes for you. And all those dudes have prowess, which is crazy because, again, we're playing like 20 spells. So, Monastery Mentor, yes, and the full playset, yes, because he's got a huge target on his back. 4 copies of Secure the Waste in the deck. Again, I think a no-brainer for a deck like this. I mean, I'd play the full 4 copies too, because we've got, you know, Gideon and something else that gives us buffs. So, if we can just Secure the Waste for like 5 at the end of their turn late in the game, and then drop a Gideon and do the emblem, you know, we've got a huge arsenal of dudes, even if we had no permanents on the turn before that. So, I mean, that's incredible for resilience. It's a great, you know, element of surprise. It's good against control decks, because we can do it at the end of their turn, you know, or when they tap out, we can Secure the Waste. There's all kinds of times when it's good against all kinds of decks to Secure the Waste. It's good for offense. It's good for defense. You can play it during the attack step and block with dudes. That's pretty good. You can take out one guy, or you can chump block a bunch of dudes. So Secure the Waste has so many good applications. One of the best token producing things we've seen in a long time. It's like as good as this card could possibly be without giving the creatures an ability. 2 copies of Wingmate Roc in the deck. Again, produces tokens. It's on theme for us, and it just happens to be one of the better cards in the entire format. Wingmate Roc is ridiculous. Great against spot removal, you know. The creatures fly. That's incredibly relevant in this case. We don't have too much of that in the deck. So just everything about the card, awesome. And, you know, it eats Manus Riders and stuff like that. So, yeah, we'll totally play this. 2 cards at the same time. 4 copies of Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, and then 4 copies of Retreat to Emeria, which I've told you about both of these before. I don't have to spend too much time on Gideon. He's one of the reasons the deck exists, you know. He can make tokens. He can make the tokens better by giving emblems, you know. Or he can just become a huge dude and swing in, you know, and have synergy with his own emblem if you've been able to pull that off. So, yeah, all 4 copies of Gideon. I know he's all the money in the deck, but he's integral to the deck as well. You know, we gotta have his emblem. That's very important. And Retreat to Emeria is just an insane card, you guys. I'm trying to tell you. Brad Nelson played this thing to the top 8 of, I think it was an invitational qualifier, an invitational period. It's a good budget replacement for Gideon if you don't have any Gideons in certain decks. But, you know, even alongside Gideon, if you get an emblem and drop a land to get the +1/+1 to all your dudes, it's just, that's freaking crazy. Like, your 1/1 tokens become 3/3s out of nowhere. And like, you got a bunch of tokens too. I mean, Hangarback Walker tokens make a difference too, you know. Wingmate Roc tokens, that they become like 5-power dudes really fast when you stack these buffs, you know. And if you're not in a position yet where you want to attack, you can always make your board a little bit bigger with Retreat to Emeria too. And you can do Gideon as well. So both cards function very similarly and are just awesome. I don't have to say anything about it. You know, one more thing about Retreat to Emeria. Usually after we've drawn our 5th land so we can play our Wingmate Roc, we really don't want to draw any more lands, you know, we're sort of done with that. But Retreat to Emeria makes it good to draw lands, which is something that a deck like this wants. That's all the token producers. That was a ton of them. Let's go ahead and give you some other creatures that sort of didn't fit in that category. We're still playing them, which we're playing 6 of creatures like that. We're playing 4 copies of Knight of the White Orchid and 2 copies of Seeker of the Way. Again, 20 spells in the deck. We're definitely going to play some Seeker of the Way, I would say. It fits in super duper well, and I wanted to play maybe Hidden Dragonslayer. I could see that in this slot. So we don't have all the defense in the world, but we have some. I could see that in this slot, but I really wanted to play Seeker of the Way, like, super duper bad. Again, so many spells that it helps us out in the early game. It's not a bad aggro creature against some decks and a great defensive creature against others. I love everything about Seeker in this deck. And we want to extend our life total so we get to the mid game, which is where we really thrive. So he's really good in the early stages. And the Knight of the White Orchid, I could say the same thing. In some situations, he can ramp us, or at the very least, help us get those drops so we never get behind. That's super awesome in a deck like this. That is a little slow to start. Knight of the White Orchid helps with that a lot. So I want at least these guys in the deck. We're playing 8 other spells in the main deck, and then we'll be into the lands here. We're playing 2 copies of Silkwrap, and then 2 copies of Stasis Snare in the main deck here, and we'll play a little bit more in the sideboard, makes sense. But in any case, Silkwrap we need for the early game. Again, we need to cover the early game a little bit better than we really do. I'd like to play Valorous Stance in the deck. I just don't see the room for it, and we don't really want to protect our tokens that much. That's not a priority. But we do want to kill bigger creatures, which Stasis Snare helps really, really well with, and at instant speed. That's awesome. Silkwrap, though, will cover the early game for us, which we need some help with. 4 copies of Dromoka's Command in the deck, the entire reason to play green, and I do think it's worth it. Now, I just said we're playing a bunch of tokens, so we don't want to protect them. Well, we could also say we're playing a bunch of tokens, so being able to fight things won't matter as much. But it's not necessarily true in this format. There's a lot of tricks. We can either make Gideon a big guy and then fight something with him. That's a trick. Hangarback Walker, we can totally trade creatures with our Hangarback Walker and one of their guys, and we'll get a bunch of dudes and kill their creature. That's not bad at all. Or if we can keep our Hangarback Walker around and fight a guy, that's amazing too, because he gets a +1/+1 counter, which is great when he dies. Hangarback Walker and Dromoka's Command, they're just peanut butter and jelly in this format. Really, really good together. But it works with other creatures too. We've got big stuff again in Wingmate Roc and Gideon when he becomes a creature. And once we start getting emblems and buffs off of Retreat to Emeria, Dromoka's Command can even make our tokens into killing machines, and this will take care of Silkwraps and stuff that have taken out Monastery Mentors, Stasis Snares and stuff like that. That'll also perhaps take care of that. So sacrificing enchantment is important, and we can also counter some burn if we have to. Wild Slash, a very important card. Fiery Impulse, an important card. So we can effectively counter some burn too. So Dromoka's Command just has so many applications that I'm totally willing to play in the deck. Absolutely. 24 lands in the deck. We've got 11 green sources to help us get to that Dromoka's Command, but we can win without the Dromoka's Command. It's just an insane card in this format. Blighted Steppe is really good. I've gained 20 life off of this in testing. It's not even hard. I mean, we go really, really, really wide, and most of our cards produce tokens, so we just gain a ton of life. Really good reset. And the Windswept Heath is awesome because it helps with Retreat to Emeria. If we can play a Heath and get a Plains that very same turn, that's 2 activations off of Retreat, which is huge when we have an emblem out. We can get 2 buffs off of Retreat to Emeria, and our guys become huge. Here's our sideboard. Look at it because we don't have that much time. It's a lot of removal. Master of the Unseen is a really good card out of this sideboard. Just want to point that out. Here's your power rankings for this deck. Not bad at all. A final score of 66, which is pretty good. That's about where I wanted it to be. And yeah, that power score of 8 is right. I mean, almost every card in the deck is a powerful card in this format. Knight of the White Orchid doesn't see as much play as it should. And then Retreat to Emeria has only seen play in a couple of decks. But besides that, all the other cards are super powerful. And we're fairly resilient because we have a few tricks up our sleeve. We're very versatile. We got some decent defense for the most part. So we cover our bases really nicely in this deck. We do a lot of different things. And it's going to cost you low prices on TCG Player, about $350, $375 to build the deck, which is pretty good compared to a lot of standard decks right now. On to the next one. This is Budget Mono White Starfield. This is a really, really cheap deck. Here's the list for it right here. Yeah, a lot of 4-ofs in this deck, very, very consistent, a lot of synergy in the deck. You see we've got 16 different enchantments that function as removal. That's really, really good. From Quarantine Field all the way down to Silkwrap, and even Pacifism makes an appearance in the deck. It's actually a really, really good card, by the way. Stop bragging on Pacifism. That's a fantastic budget card, and has a lot of synergy in this deck, obviously. Suppression Bonds is an all-star, can take out Planeswalkers. That's really, really good, and big creatures that we really worry about, The deck is good against, like, the Slew of Eldrazi that we see going around. That's cool, and even mid-range decks and even aggro decks, because we've got 8 things that can can take out smaller creatures early on in the game. And there's a lot of good stuff going on. And once we can take things over, I mean, there's a total of 30 enchantments in the deck. You will turn on the Starfield. Don't worry about that. And once you get a Sigil out, you don't even need the Starfield. Like, if you get a Sigil out, you'll almost every turn get a 4/4 flyer. I mean, all but 4 cards in the main deck that aren't lands are enchantments, you know, and we run Blessed Spirits, which can get huge. I mean, I've seen this thing get to 8/8 before. It's really crazy. Myth Realized has also been a good card in this deck, along with Retreat to Emeria, by the way. Both of these have been much better than I thought they would be. Retreat to Emeria I put in because it's an enchantment. You could play Citadel Siege in its place. I could see doing that. There's a few cards you could put in this deck that I didn't use here, but I could see Citadel Siege instead of Retreat, but I really, really have liked Retreat. Oh, it turns out, not just for the +1/+1 boost, but for, you know, being able to give us smaller dudes. That's not bad at all, chump blockers. And a lot of times they'll want to block your big enchantments that you want to get through with. So you can get through with the smaller dudes on attacks. That's not bad either. Here's our sideboard, more enchantments mostly. Suspension Field is a really good card out of this sideboard, as is Mastery of the Unseen. Not every deck in the format we are relevant against. You know, again, we got 16 things that take out creatures and some permanents too, like Quarantine Field. But some decks that won't be as relevant. They just don't play that many permanents, so Mastery of the Unseen can come in against those decks and be really, really good. Here's your power rankings for this deck. Get this, by the way, a final score of 63, which is 3 points under the $400 deck I just showed you, you know, $350 deck. So a final score of 63, that's respectable for a budget deck. It'll cost you low prices on TCG Player, no joke, $20 to make this deck. $20 to make this deck, and it's so much fun. Very, very consistent. You can take out a lot of dudes in the early game, cruise your way into activating that Starfield, and just take over from there. You'll have like 3 4/4 flyers by the time you know it when you play your Sigil. It's just ridiculous. The deck is very, very fun. You know, we can dominate the early game with Pacifism, with Silkwrap, Stasis Snare, and then by the time we drop our by the time we drop our Starfield, we're like most of the way there already. So the deck has been better than I thought it would be. And here's our last deck, sort of the fan pick, you know. This is Mono White Monks, which I worked on for a little while, you know. I thought this deck was actually really, really cool. We're just basically adopting the philosophy of a mono red deck, hardcore mono red deck in this format. And we're playing a lot of dudes that have prowess, and we're playing a lot of combat tricks. You see all the combat tricks that we're playing, 12 of which cost just 1 mana, which can actually get ridiculous, you know. We don't really have that many ways to refill, and that kind of sucks, you know. But we can get through for some awesome attacks in this deck, you know, with just a couple of prowess dudes and a couple of 1 or 2 mana things, you know. Once we play a Jeskai Student, and especially in Ojutai Exemplars, we can play in Ojutai Exemplars, and we have, like, I don't know, a Defiant Strike and a Feat of Resistance. Let's just say that in our hand. Things get out of hand crazily fast, you know. We'll be able to gain a bunch of life, and with the Feat of Resistance, get through pretty easily with the Ojutai Exemplars. We can give it lifelink, gain a bunch of life, you know, it gets buffs, so that's crazy. Jeskai Student even can get big if you just have like 2 things, you know, with a Defiant Strike and like 1 other spell. I mean, it's like a 5-power guy. That's crazy. So the deck is pretty good, but our resiliency is low, which I'm about to show you with these power rankings. Just to say this, I don't have a sideboard built for this deck yet, but I envision that it probably uses Silkwrap. Valorous Stance is almost certainly a card in the sideboard for this deck. And a couple of other things, just, you know, light removal, maybe even Stasis Snare, because it's instant speed, it buffs our dude, and it takes out guys. I just wanted to be as aggressive as possible in the main deck, but I can see this removal going into the side. And here's our power rankings for the deck. A final score of 52, which is very, very low, but on the other hand, it's all or nothing. You know, it's one of those decks. We got a lot of offense in the deck. We're very, very explosive. Things can happen out of nowhere, you know. But, the same token, we're not resilient at all. We're not versatile at all. We do one thing, and if we get blown out, we're pretty much done for the game. So, you have to really, really play the deck well. Good news, however, is this deck is only, what, $5 or $6 on TCG low prices? I mean, the deck costs absolutely nothing. The deck costs lunch to build. I mean, there's almost nothing in the deck that costs any money whatsoever. Well, that's all I got for now. A triple tech in the books, and I don't think it took that long either. I made admirable time on this one. But in any case, what are we doing next time? Well, I want to do maybe Cynic Beatdown next time, and I've got an idea for Grixis. So let me know what you want to see next. I'll be doing that. And I'm still working on Temur Wanderer as well, so stay tuned. Well, if you enjoyed this content, let me know, man. Like, hit the thumbs up button. That's the best way to let me know. Share this video and then comment, please. That's really the best way to let me know, to be honest with you. Comment, let me know how you felt or what could have been done differently. Or, you know, if you play this at FNM, tell us how well you did. I always love hearing that people won or did, you know, place at their FNM with these decks. It's super awesome. That makes me feel really good. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.